Welcome to the Living Consciously TV show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme today is Become Your Own Sage. And let me introduce you to our guest cast as well as to our entire Health and Wellness Evolution cast. Our guest cast today is Danielle Galt, and she's an author and also a wellness coach, and she's coming to us from Canada. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thanks very much.
Good to have you. And we also have, of course, Jamie Lerner, and Jamie Lerner is part of our Health and Wellness Evolution cast as well, and she's coming to us from that beautiful city called Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
It's great to have you. And we also have Nina Andiver-DeRosa, and she's also part of our Health and Wellness Evolution cast, and she's joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada.
How are you? Yes,
Welcome.
It's very cold here.
Really?
Yes.
It's beautiful here in Denver.
No, it's cold and rainy.
Good to have you. And
Thank
then,
you.
last but not least, Linda Dyer. She's also part of our Health and Evolution cast, and she is coming to us from Australia, down and under. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, it's awesome to have you here. So the leading question today is, of course, for Danielle. Let's explain to our viewers, what is a sage?
Oh, I didn't expect that one.
Because I think a lot of people are wondering, what are we talking about?
Uh-huh. Well, you could say that a sage would be a wise person. Yeah. So sort of like become your own guru,
Yes.
become wise about your own life. And yeah. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I actually can relate to it because that's my primary energy. The sage. I've done a lot of work in this area, so I can certainly relate to it, but I wanted to make sure all of our viewers can relate to it as well. So one of the most interesting questions that I think I'm going to pose to you is, how do we communicate with each other consciously?
Well, I think the first thing is always to make sure you have a clear intention in your mind and be conscious of what you are striving to communicate, whether you have to solve a problem, address a difficult issue, or to encourage growth and understanding. It helps if you're consciously intending that communication in advance of interacting with somebody.
Can we think of any other prerequisites for making sure that we are consciously communicating? Because I think there's a few more. I mean, I can offer one up right away. One is to be connected to ourselves, and two, to have clarity. Sorry.
Yes.
So if we're going to be communicating from confusion, I can rest assure myself and everybody else that that's not going to be a conscious conversation, will it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think so. No.
So what else? Anybody has anything else that comes up?
Well, I think we're communicating from the first moment we see somebody, and that's through our body. So that's about as conscious as you're going to get. Is the truth, is the energy that's coming from your body. That 55 to 75% of us is communicating through the health and wellness of our body. And then someone may believe our statement or not through words after they've recognized the body language that it's coming from.
Yeah,
Right.
I also think it all depends also if you're in sort of full view of yourself and you're very conscious of where you are and what you're doing, but is the other person, and when you look at the other person, you think, wait a second, where are they coming from? Mm-hmm. Because they might not be coming from the same person, and that could change the way you feel. So to be conscious of that as well, of your opposite person, or the one you're having a conversation with, where are they standing that you can actually handle? And if you're in full conscious of that, I think you're where you should be.
Well, I'm not sure that what I'm about to say is new to anybody. I mean, I'm pretty sure it isn't. Are there some alternatives? Because what I've learned and what I've seen in the world is anytime we come up to somebody in a social interaction, or even if it's not a social interaction, one of the first things we start doing is assessing and judging. Are there some alternatives?
Well, I think that comes from our own discomfort within ourselves. And so right then and there, I think If we could understand that as a internal cue that maybe something is not right within ourselves, then that would help us direct ourselves inward instead of outward. And so that might be a really good thing. If you find yourself judging another, you would be able to say, wait a minute, what exactly is this meaning? And a nice reminder to then kind of pull back and look within and find out what's going on with you, as opposed to projecting whatever that is onto the other. Because I find that's usually projection. What we feel about another is quite clearly what we're actually feeling about ourselves in that moment. So,
does assessing and judging, though, have to be negative? Like, if we're assessing and judging people, can we automatically go, wow, that person's got some interesting qualities? I'd be intrigued to find out more about them, and then come from a place of
that's more of an
great
observation, though. I think that, because I think a judgment and observation are different. I think that we make wonderful observations about others without judgment. But a judgment, I think, is very clearly a dismissal of another. And in fact, it's really speaks to the relationship that we're having with ourselves in that moment. So I think there is a distinction, because I think observations we make about others are lovely, you know, and I think that opens the door to lots of communication. The judgment, I think there is no opening.
I've always been very confused about judging someone, because I really don't judge people. I take them as what they are and who they are, and you know, you start the conversation. I think that revolves around who they are and what they are. But I think you can't really judge somebody if you don't really know them. I mean, yes, you can judge people you know if you want to, but I think judging a stranger is really not a very nice thing to do.
I usually start with an open-ended probe. I find that helps my mind to sort of get focused on, you know, my intention. Like, what can I do to love this person, or what can I do to contribute to this group? That type of thing. That helps me to sort of open up the conscious intention for positive results. And then, as you say, being aware of our own behaviors and responses, and that tells us more about ourselves, and just keep going toward clarity as much as you can, and with the intention of loving and sharing and being with other people.
I love what Linda said, by the way, and you said, why does judging always have to be, or always looking on the opposite side of being bad? Because can you judge somebody in a good way, or is that not judging? An answer. Danielle?
Oh, an answer. When you're, I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
It was, Linda had said that why does judging always have to be kind of on the negative side, and why can't judging be on the positive side, which I've never understood. But so is there such a thing as that? How would you explain that?
Yeah, well, I think we're looking at the ego, really, when we're talking about good and bad and right and wrong and that type of thing. And so we're coming from the ego sense of, you know, our personal values and things like that, which I think isn't bad. You know, we have to have those in order to operate in the world. But I think people like ourselves who've spent time, you know, searching for answers in spirituality, we also know we can step out of that ego and ask a broader question and reach for a higher principle in life. And when we do that, it frees us up from the pain and pleasure principle, which you know, the planet tends to operate on, you know, the function of opposite.
But I think then what you're talking about is discerning, and discerning is different than judging. So, and I think we must discern for ourselves, but that isn't judging. That's just, you know, establishing a preference for ourselves that really has nothing to do with another. So
Jamie, it's interesting what you're saying as well with observing and discerning. So do those, when we're observing and discerning with another, are we still not coming from a place of perception, that our own perception is being, of ourself is being perceived within somebody else?
But I think to discern and to observe is something that we are deriving to based upon our own lens.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make it so. That just means that is our experience of the person or the situation, and that can only be our experience. So, who are we to say what another is or isn't or feels or doesn't feel? And I think the discerning part is us taking responsibility for whatever it is that we are experiencing and owning that.
Well,
to be our experience.
Yeah, but who that
Our
is,
interpretation.
Jamie, is our egos. I mean, it's basically a playground. The planet is filled up with a playground that's egos are playing with egos.
Well,
So
I
let's
don't
play the
believe
game
that it is-
if
I
we're
don't
playing.
really believe that our ego kicks in when we're connected with ourselves. I believe that when we're connected with ourselves, our ego stands down and we're able to feel our way in and out of situations in a very loving and open way. I believe when we're disconnected, then the ego kicks in, and that's how we're operating.
Yes,
And therein, I think, lies the judgment.
Yes, I completely agree.
So, to discern and to observe is not ego-driven at all.
No.
It's irrelevant. It's not, part of what we are when we're connected.
Okay,
Well, we
so
do have the physical body too, so I mean, we can't deny that that's the instrument of which we calibrate what's going on around us. So just
absolutely.
like the scientist is the observer of the science and influences the way the science results are. So as human beings, we do have these perceptions, we do have this instrument, we do have to filter it through the physical self. And I like the word discernment very much because we always have that choice, to be consciously discerning and asking ourselves, what can we do to bring our highest forward today?
yeah, great. So does anybody feel on the cast, including our guest cast, that there is a lot of like horizontal linear thinking that goes on in the world, meaning that we just kind of process our experience from the past to the present and to the future, and it's very linear. Are there any other options other than linear thinking?
Will you give an concrete example of what you're asking? Because I don't think I understand.
Okay. All right, so an example would be thinking or operating in a linear world would be what we talked about earlier, which is having the ego, which is I connect the ego with the mind, and having the mind have a havoc on our experience, meaning we turn over like the keys for the car, we turn over the control over to the ego, and the ego takes it from the past, attempting to, of course, always protect us, but there's more that happens when we just gave the keys to the ego, because the billions of bits of information that's in our mind and in our memory gets to create a reality that I'm describing as a linear, horizontal, way of existing. It's an illusion. We're not who's creating our reality is not us. Does that make sense?
Not to me.
No,
Okay. So when you're in your
ego.
ego, so let me put it a different way. So when any of you in your ego, how do you know that you are?
Well, you wouldn't if you're asking a question that you can't answer. Because if you don't know you are, how do you know that it's there?
Well, I think that sometimes when we're reactive, that's an indication that
Yeah.
we're in our
I
ego.
agree.
Yes.
And instead of responsive. So
Yes. Not only that, I mean, that's in interaction. But let's say we're not interacting with anybody, we're just by ourselves. So all that conversation that's in our head, does anybody else, am I crazy? Am I the only one that does this? Do you have conversations in your head?
Absolutely.
What do you think that is? What do you
I
think
don't
that?
mind admitting it.
What
but
do you think that is? Do you think that's the real
I think
you?
it's because there's nobody around. Just to lighten things up a little bit, so there's nobody else to talk to. So I'm going to talk to myself.
But
I'm
Really?
going to lighten things up a
I
little.
think there's
what
a
do you think,
difference
Jamie?
because I think you can be tuned into your intuitive knowing and have those kinds of conversations where you're connected to your higher self, and that is the conversation that's occurring. And then I think there are the other kinds of conversations that I think you're talking about, which is more ego-driven. So, which is more, I don't know, certainly not from a place of being connected to yourself or anybody else. And
Well,
So I don't-
actually, since
judge
I had
us,
this experience
podcast.
many times, I want to share from personal experience that when I am connected to myself and when I'm by myself, I'm actually not having a conversation in my head. There's silence.
Okay.
All right. So who are you having a conversation with?
Well, when I'm in my ego, I'm having a conversation with whose I am. Let's begin there. Whose I am.
And who are you?
Well,
Let's find out.
who I
In your
am.
silent world of being alone in your house.
Who I am is is much bigger than what I'm able to express right now. Who I am is possibility, and who I am is not my feelings, not my experiences. Who I am is someone that's willing to evolve in the world by being connected to myself and being connected to all of you and being connected to the entire world, being connected to everything, and realizing that there is a universal consciousness that's connecting me to you and to all of us.
And
That's
I
who I am.
totally agree. And it's one of the things that people have in spirituality is how do you do that? You know, so you still have to translate the collective unconscious and collective consciousness to living on planet Earth.
Hello.
And am I off?
No, you're on. We're
Oh.
listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's where I think before I said I'm about applied spirituality, because abstract kinds of things can't help people too much if they don't have the experience of silence or going beyond the intellect or going beyond the ego. To apply spirituality, there needs to be an intention and a you need to go into silence. You need to sort of leave the body and mind, because I think in spiritual worlds, we know we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're much more than that. But we still have to use the body and the mind to navigate ourselves, on planet Earth and interact with other people, with the idea of striving for, the highest within ourselves, within the development that we have. And that's why I say, become your own sage, because everything in life is a teacher. Dr. Mishra used to say, a dog can be your guru. Anything is your teacher as long as you have the desire to evolve, to share, to love, to be with other people. You still have to do something. You have to, have some kind of thinking on planet Earth. That this is what the physical instrument is for. It's great service to us all to have one of these. But you mentioned timeline, Steve, and I think, what you're saying is, do we calibrate our life based on past, present, and future? And if that's the way we're perceiving the flow of our life, then we're really more on the physical plane, and you're suggesting that there's another plane of consciousness that we can operate on. And so how do you do that, Steve?
Yeah, so instead of thinking of it as horizontal, how about if we just think of it as vertical? And what I mean by vertical is first of all, be willing to anything that occurs in our experience, whatever it is, be willing to look what it means. I think it, for example, let me give you, this is a good example. Okay, so right now, we're having this experience of this cable television show. I'm here in space and time. All of you are here. There's 4 of you here, and there's all the viewers, and there's my granddaughter actually watching the show right here in the studio. So what the question then is, what made it so that we are all connected right now in time and space and having this experience?
Intention. Yeah.
Well, nothing happens by accident, so I
That's
guess
right.
it's
That's right.
drawn
Yeah.
together.
And and we intended to be here. We booked it into our day timer. So
So this is. Would you say that this is what manifestation is? We basically manifested this show.
Yeah.
We made it happen. We made it all work. All of us, individual minds and self beings, all made this work by being there, by being conscious and being there. And also, I think, to be doing something you want to do and you're excited about it. So you're putting yourself into that energy place that sort of maybe gives you the ego and gives you the satisfaction of doing something you really like to do, because I think all of us are here very grounded and very interested in the conversation and what we're talking about and whom we are.
Right.
Great. So I think what Ninon is talking about also is that we said that we're going to do something, and then we actually did it. Now, how many people do you come across in your lives when they say that they're going to do something, but it doesn't happen?
Yeah,
Well,
I think one of the biggest examples between what we're talking about is every time I used to go away, I'd lend my car to my son, and I'd come back and there were these little accidents, and I would react, which is total ego, just total reaction, living on the past. That's what I used to do, so that's what I do now. And one day I came home, there was this little accident again in the back of my Mercedes, and I stopped, and I went, I'm going to learn to respond to this. And like you, Steve, I went into silence and I said, you know what? I need to deal with this. And my son said, thank you for being so understanding. I said, oh, I'm not understanding yet. And
son.
I actually slept on it. I didn't give it any more. I just said, the universe will now give me the messages, what exactly is going on. But to continually react was getting nowhere. It's total ego. No one benefits from that. To respond, though, and to be in the moment rather than thinking about what we used to do in the past, to change the way we act. The next morning I woke up and it was a very clear message that came to me saying he's always late. If you help him clear the habit of being late, there will no longer be any more car accidents.
No more dings.
I shared that with him. I said, you know what? The message came to me that because of your lateness, there are lots of opportunities for you to have car accidents. If you would like to go and have a look at that habit of being late, I will then reassess whether you get my car or not.
But I think we have to make the distinction between intention and action, because those are two very different things. You know, many people have wonderful intentions or not so wonderful intentions, and that's not necessarily tied to action. So,
what do you think moves us into action? This is so important. I just don't want to leave it.
You know, I think that alignment with the intention, which means that the thought and the feelings lined up, then can create the inspired action.
Oh, there you go. That's the word I was looking for. Inspiration is what moves us into action.
Yes. Well, it certainly can move us into action.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt with something that happened to me many years ago, and it's similar to what Linda was saying. I had a stepdaughter that came to live with me, and she was only, 10 and a half, and we were in the kitchen doing dishes and everything, and she dropped this glass, and it broke all over the place. And she looked up at me, and she said, oh, don't tell Daddy. And I looked at her and I said, well, I don't know if we're not going to do that, but I don't think you actually got that glass and deliberately dropped it and broke it. So I actually understood her little tiny hands. I understood the situation, and I put her into a place where don't be frightened, don't be afraid, and don't get panicky, because I see you did not do this purposely. And I think if we, like you were saying, Linda, if you understand the situation rather than jumping in, or you're terrible, you're bad, understanding the situation from somebody else's point of view, and it was totally an accident. But obviously, what had happened to her previously, she got into trouble over things like that, and somebody had yelled at her for something. There was probably also an accident. So I put her at ease, and things went very smoothly after that, and she was very careful after that as well, because she was observing everything. So it was a good lesson, actually, for both of us, for me to understand and for her to understand. And that was communication, of not judging.
So, Jamie, is that also with both of our examples, Ninon and my own, are they examples of that we had an intention to change? We had an intention to change an old habit, and we were inspired to act in a different way to get a different result.
I think so, because at that time you allowed yourself to come into alignment. Your thoughts and your feelings became one, and then the inspired action was what you were able to communicate in such a loving way. And so, I think that that's the beauty of a clear intention. But I also think that intentions can be very misunderstood, that our intentions could be one thing and could be totally misperceived by another. And we can only be responsible for our own intentions. We're not necessarily responsible for how the person experiences or receives our intentions. And I think that that's very important as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So what we were just doing for the almost first half hour of the show really is, this is the appetizer for the next conversation, which is the main meal. And the main meal is, we're going to talk about balance, and we're going to talk about life balance, because it has everything, I feel, to do with how healthy we are in our lives. And it just so happens that the entire foundation of the show, Living Consciously TV, is balance. And we have these 7 different areas, starting with health and wellness, and then goes into relationships and all the other areas, that makes up this thing called life balance. And I'd like to have this dialogue about balance, and how do we know when we're out of balance, and how does it cost us, and where does it cost us when we are out of balance and we don't do anything about it? Danielle?
Well, of course, we like to use the triangle: mental, social, physical side, and the spiritual comes out of those 3 sides being in balance. So usually on any of those sides, you can calibrate. I'm very much a calibration person, So yeah, on the mental side, if we find we're getting angry and our values are in conflict with other people, then often we can be worried or have insomnia, so we know we're out of balance on the mental principle. On the social side...
Okay, hang on there for a second. Hang on
Yes.
there. I just heard something that I think is really important. So when we are in conflict with people, what's the right thing to do? Do we work it out, or do we run away?
I think one of the things you have to keep asking is, conflict is conflict. So it's difficult to deal with conflict if you've got a principle at stake. Then do you fight for that principle, or do you become conciliatory towards it? Do you compromise? In life, we have 3 basic strategies. We can alter a situation, we can avoid it, or we can compromise ourselves around it. So we have to look at each situation and ask ourselves, in that situation, what's the most important thing to serve, yourself and to serve the whole. And sometimes it might be that you have to get you have to bring your ego in and do something that maybe might not look so spiritual, but might be absolutely necessary for your own balance.
Okay, got it. So in interactions with people, this could be translated to, like, when somebody's communicating with us and we're communicating with them, and they're asking us something, the answer could be yes, no, or counter offer, correct? Could be any of those 3 things.
Well, if you're going to alter a situation, you have to be assertive. You have to be dominant and confident and state what you're after. So that means you have to be confident, and our confidence can go up and down on the line from confident to submissive, depending on how we're perceiving ourselves in the world. And if somebody has power over us, and if we're in a situation, let's say we have a terrible boss and they have all the power, but you still need that job, you might want to avoid or compromise in that situation. Is it the best thing for your spirit? Well, it depends. If you've got children to feed and bills to pay, maybe that's a time to compromise.
Although, what about reframing? Because I think reframing is a wonderful tool that allows us to feel differently about a situation that we actually cannot change, but we can always change how we feel about it.
That's exactly that. In that situation, that's all the power you have, is to consciously decide if I am in this situation and it's not, it's not something that I'm really comfortable with, but I have to stay. Then I can change my attitude toward it. That's pretty much all the power I know of when you're.
But
Well, what about if
that's a
some-
tremendous amount of power, because if you think about it, that's the only thing we really do have control over is how we feel and what we think about. That's huge power.
It is
Absolutely. But shouldn't we also respect other people's opinions? I mean, we can't, if we all thought alike and we all wanted everybody to think and be like us, that would be, that would be nice, yeah, maybe. But, respect other people's opinions of, they've got an opinion. Normally opinions end up in an argument sometimes, I mean, with a lot of people. But if you respect other people's opinions of your own opinion and you understand and you can I always think sit and talk and sort of work it out. Don't sort of, say, well, I don't want to have anything to do with it and walk out. But respect each other as to what you've both got different opinions, you've both got different ideas, and respect that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. Yeah. But
So,
you're the
so hang on for a second. I have this commitment that I'm watching with my eyes and listening with my ears and connected to
good idea,
myself and
Steve.
connected to everybody. So I want to make sure that we lose as much as possible the word you, and we replace it with I, and we start talking to each other and speaking to each other and to the viewers with I statements and personal experiences. I just felt like I needed to say that in the show.
okay.
I like people to respect my opinion. Okay, Steve?
Okay, great,
Like that?
awesome. So I also heard something
and
that.
I don't argue with myself at home.
Okay. Okay, so I heard something between the lines there that Daniel was talking about, and I just wanted to get some clarity. So were you really saying that we are either dominated by someone or something, or we're dominating someone or something?
I think what I was saying is on the line of assertiveness to submissiveness, you have to be dominant. Like, to be assertive, you have to be present, you have to be vocal, you have to state what is important to you. And if you're in a situation where you don't have any power, you might find yourself going submissive. And in that situation, I always say to people, it doesn't matter to me what you choose for yourself in life, as long as you choose it consciously. There might be times when being submissive is the perfect thing for you to do in a situation. And if so, just, acknowledge that. And as Jamie said, reframe it. So if I have no control over the situation or myself in the situation, I at least can control my attitude toward it and try to make the best of it or get the most out of it or still try to contribute. For an example, there is a friend of mine who is helping his wife with daycare, and he originally was supposed to be a top-notch salesperson, and he came to me one day and said, I find myself changing diapers now. And I said, well, I hope you change the diapers in the best way you can. And because if he's beating himself up or he's feeling bad because he's changing diapers, then what kind of a feeling does he have inside? We all know that affects our immune system and brings it down, weakens the muscles, and brings those toxic kinds of feelings inside. So we want, in that case, lift the spirit up by saying, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. Let me see what I can contribute and how I can do it in a loving way and be the best diaper changer I can be in the world or whatever.
And also the baby would feel that too, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't the baby also feel whether
Yeah,
it's an
yeah.
angry thing or whether it's a happy thing? I mean, if
yes.
you're happy doing an action,
Yes.
you bring
Yes.
the energy of the
Yes.
strength from yourself into that person. If you're angry,
Yeah.
you bring the same thing in. So that is
Yeah.
a reaction of somebody who really can't talk, who can just
Yes.
feel.
That's right. Yeah.
I
remember that.
find
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I find now that if there's a conversation that comes up that I'm not totally in any agreement with whatsoever, I will use the word interesting. And I use it a lot now, and I'll say, that's interesting. In other words, I get that.
And intriguing.
Yeah.
And I get that it's coming from your
Intriguing, interesting.
but what I do is inside of me, there's this automatic hand going up, and you know what? I just need a few seconds to think about what you just said, because that's interesting. In other words, I'm not going to react straight away because that's what I used to do, and that may not be totally the right way to handle this. So I need a little bit more time to absorb whatever that statement is, and then I'll get back to you. And I actually allow myself time now to absorb whatever it is that I find interesting and not totally something that I want to agree with right now. I need to think about it a bit more in order to get a better response, a response rather than a reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to retrain ourselves in allowing ourselves not to even partake in a conversation that we're in. We could just allow the other person to say whatever they're saying, and that would be fine as well. There's not a need to participate in a conversation where we're not feeling any compatibility with any part of it, and I think that's okay as well.
Yeah.
Would you tell the other person that that's your position?
No, I think that you would just, in a very loving way, allow that person to express whatever they are going to express, and that would be fine for you. But it really has so little to do with you that it doesn't. No need to respond to it.
This is so interesting that
may have-
I have to take a chance and a gamble to mention something that I think is very interesting. So and then hopefully we can have a little dialogue about it. So we're having somebody on our show next week who's a returning guest cast, and his name is Sensei Grant. And what's interesting is he sent me an email last week and asked me, make sure that one of our cast members is not going to be on the show. And that cast member happens to be Jamie. And Jamie sent me an email yesterday.
This is weird.
And Jamie asked me yesterday that I'm passing the torch. I don't want to be in that show. Now,
That's interesting.
and
I had
haven't-
no idea he
and
sent
I
that.
haven't spoke to either one of you about what the other said, but I feel compelled to bring this to the show because this is what I believe where the juice is. And we can learn something here and transfer something here, or we might not. So who wants to start this dialogue?
Jamie, it's got to be Jamie. Come on, Jamie.
I'm going to tell you, Steve.
I don't know. I just know intuitively. I feel like to be on the show next week will not be productive. I'm not in alignment with being on that show, and I knew it. And so I needed to just kind of pass the torch. And
it's funny you should say that,
excuse
Jane,
myself.
because I saw that your email, and I had also spoken to Steve, and I said to Steve, we were talking about this, and he said, well, what do you think the reason? He said, Jamie's not going to, I said, who's going to be on the show? And he said, well, Jamie was going to be on it, she's going to be on it. And I said, yes, I saw the email. So he said to me, he said, well, why do you think? And I said, well, the last show, I said, they didn't really kind of get on that well. There was a couple little problems. And I said, I just don't think that Jamie would like to be addressing that again. And so she's taking herself out, not knowing what this guy was going to say. But there was definitely a conflict there of whatever it was. And I think it was Jamie and I actually had the same conflict with him, I think.
But I think it's a very intuitive and very productive that he and I would both know that nothing good at this time can come of that. And I think that is allowing both of our egos to not get involved and to really honor where we're both at. Certainly we have different positions.
Hang on a minute. Could we think that way? Or if I'm a viewer, could I be thinking, well, hang on a minute, you just told me that perception is projection. So what is it that either of you are perceiving that the other one has that they see in each other that they don't necessarily want to see? And so rather than confront it, they're saying, well, let's just both pull out, or let's just one of us pull out, and then we don't have to deal with it.
You had to have seen the past two shows that we were on together to really understand that nothing productive can occur. I mean, these are two, wonderful people that have so much to bring to the table that cannot bring anything to the table when we're in the same show.
Okay, now this is really good.
Having a conflict,
This is for me. It's very juicy. So let's take a different example of this. Let's just create a situation that instead of this is being about the TV show, it is all of us are working in corporate America, and we have a team, and this is the team, and we're supposed to accomplished something very important for the company. And here I am. I'm the project manager, and I am leading this team. And there's two members of the team that aren't getting along. And they both saying, you know what, I'm out. How does this work
But
in
I don't
corporate
think
America?
we're saying we're out, because it's so interesting, because I really feel that what I would or wouldn't have to say is not important enough to say it.
Okay, I have
So-
to disagree with that right now. What you have to say, Jamie, and this is why you're on this show, is priceless.
Yes.
But not in the
But
on
not
the
in his eyes.
platform with not. It's not even about his eyes. It's that he and I are speaking two different languages, and the purpose of the show is really to present important material. And I think he has very important material to present. And my issue with him is his platform and the way he presents his material, because I feel that it's very condescending and it puts everybody down. So I don't want in any way to reassert now for the third time how I feel about his presentation. And I'm hoping that without me being there, he really can actually present the material, because this man has some very interesting things to present. And I can't get past the presentation of it. So
Okay,
it's a beautiful
so hang on for a second.
thing.
But I really, my request is to see if we can superimpose this into other life experiences, because I think this kind of stuff happens in the world out there every day.
Yes, and
course it does.
and I
Absolutely.
excuse myself from many things. That is me being completely out of my ego, being completely connected to myself, and saying, I'd like to excuse myself. I'm passing the torch.
Did the experiences that you had before, Jamie, did that create stress for you?
With Sensei,
Yes.
you know, it created frustration for me, because I feel like the material that was so important to address for the purpose of the viewers, it never occurred. And I knew I was part of the problem there, because once again, I couldn't get past the presentation of
So
how.
so let me ask you a question. Is it a good idea for both of you to quit, and one goes this way and one goes that way, and the problem is not solved between the two of you of being able to have a conversation?
No, the best thing would be to allow him to come on the show and to have other cast members that would allow him to present the way he presents, and hopefully the
that's not what
information.
that was not what I was saying. What I was saying was between the two of you. So the two of you, rather than sort of sort it out or sort of talk about it, he's going to go his way, you're going to go that way. Do you think there could ever be a time when you could get back together again and have a conversation with him of all the beautiful things you want him to bring out with you sitting there?
No, I do not. And I think law of attraction sorts it out every single time. That's
What do you
beautiful.
think, Dan?
I'm waiting for Danielle to
Dan,
jump
Dan
in.
wants- Dan
Yeah, well, I'm actually having a problem with Steve.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, I think if you don't have permission from Sensei to discuss him in the viewers, in the public arena here, without
do.
him being here to...
But I do.
And he's okay that we're talking.
Yeah, he's absolutely okay.
And with Jamie, I mean, to say that on the radio or the television, you know, it's like if I were sitting there, I think I'd probably be kind of put off a little bit. You know, if you brought that up and it was me that he didn't want to be on the show with, and you made it public.
Oh, I know, I'm okay with that.
But this is reality. This is reality. See, this is what we do. We dance around things, and we hoard and hide things away that we don't want people to see.
Okay, let me ask you-
This is real.
Let me
In
ask you a
there-
question. Jamie, how do you feel right now with Steve bringing this up
I
to the
feel
forefront?
great. I feel
So you
so great.
feel big enough within yourself and
I
whom
feel
you are that
wonderful.
there's no problem.
No problem. And I'm actually very excited to see how the show turns out.
And do you think, would you advise other people to do the same thing, to sit back, because you're feeling so good and
I
comfortable?
can't advise anyone to do anything.
Okay.
All I can say is that what I do for myself is I know myself very well. I am connected to myself, and I am most of the time able to disengage myself from my ego. And that works really well for me. And what works well for other people is what they have to do. And I think when we tune into ourselves, we really are able to guide ourselves to doing what's best for each and every one of us as individuals.
That's true.
And you admitted to yourself that you did not want to follow through with it. And you said to yourself, I don't really want to follow through with this, and I feel uncomfortable with it. But you were big enough, and you overcame your ego, because coming on the television you love. So you overcame all that and said, I'm not going to do it. I think that's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I can completely accept it. It's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you.
If that's what's in your best interest, I'm not going to force you to be on the show.
But I'm also looking forward to seeing the show, because I think it's in the best interest of the viewers to finally have this man say what he needs to say, whatever that is.
All right, so I got to keep my mouth shut. Because I never promised that.
So Danielle is probably wondering what the heck is going on here. So I actually have permission from every cast member to ask.
Oh, okay. All right.
these
Well,
kind of
see, I
things.
didn't know that, so thank
Yeah.
you for clarifying
Yeah,
that.
no
because,
problem. You would have
you know, if I were sitting on the panel there and this came as a surprise in the public, I think that would not be showing respect.
So we're looking for what we're looking for, Danielle, is we're really looking
Yeah.
for the truth.
Yep.
And how are we going to find out the truth if we don't do this? We never find out the truth.
That's right, but the truth is often based on how people operate. Like if Jamie says she can, not have her ego involved and she'll withdraw, well, then I might lose something from Jamie because I might want that ego involved and I might want to have that conflict to clear things up, or, to talk to Sensei and say, look, I don't like your framework. It doesn't work for me. Is there a way we can work together to make a framework that works?
Danielle, I have to say that's one thing I can't do it.
Okay, so
can't do
so
it.
I have the
I
same
mean, not with
tendency
him, but
as
in
you have,
general.
Danielle. I mean, there's nothing I want more than these two to say, I'm willing to come on the show and see if we can clear this up, because that is what would help the world out there.
But not really. I don't know if it would help the world. And I
Really?
have to say, I'm not interested in helping the world, because if something isn't
How about
good
helping
for
yourself?
me, well, I certainly know it's not going to help myself. Because first of all, those decisions are based upon me first and everyone else second. I put myself first and foremost all the time.
Well,
which is
and
how I
that's
stay
exactly
connected to
what
myself.
that's what Dr. Jung said as well. Like we are the captain of our own universe. Like it is always about ourselves, and that has to be discernment, and some of that's ego, making conscious decisions about how we want to be or speak or operate in the world. I mean, I don't see how you can get away from the ego. I mean, it's the mental principle. It's the part of us that allows us to make decisions. No, I'm not going to be on that show. No, I don't think that's the best service for myself. That's discernment, and that's got to do with the
I agree, Danielle. But what's the difference between where is this decision coming from? Is it coming from our ego, or is it coming from our higher self or new self or whatever you want to call it, that this is in our best interest? Now, I know Jamie enough, long enough, that I know that this is coming from her higher self. Her higher self is telling her, I don't want to do this. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay. So in that situation, because of the knowledge of Jamie and the work she's done, you trust that process and that decision.
But I think this is really important because we talked about balance, and somewhere we got off that track. I think what Jamie experiences is part of this balance. It's like if you get a message that's strong, like when I was really sick, I kept getting messages, and the messages could be a cramp. And that to me is, I understand that my body's then short of calcium and I need to go and do something about that. And if I've got a bit of a sore hip or a sore back, or I'm not totally well, then they're all messages. And I think what we do is through our ego and and for many years, in order for me to get sick, I had to have ignored all that, ignored the messages, and so I became really quite ill. And now, like Jamie, I don't ignore them anymore. It's like, what is that message that we get? Is it a gut ache? Now, what's going on with that gut? Because the gut's related to fear. So what am I fearful about right now or not doing and that will bring me back to my balance once I eradicate the problem. But it's being open enough for you to say to yourself, so what is that? What is that reason why I'm not feeling totally comfortable with that? Or what's going on in my body that I'm not feeling totally well right now? Or what is it about that person that I'm not, totally au fait with who they are or what they're doing? And I went through that recently with a person and went, oh my gosh, there's a tad of resentment in me around that person. So let me go and clear the resentment, and then I'll look at that person differently. It doesn't mean we have to be best friends. But what it did was it brought me back to being a cause. And I believe that all of us have a duty to assist other people to get to cause around their world, to be responsible. And teach your kids how to do the same. Be responsible for where you are. And that's balance for me, is being at cause, being responsible for everything every day, rather than blaming people and then getting into this disempowered state. Just being empowered and being at cause. Take the message.
I think that word you're using, responsible, is a very, very strong word. And I think we are losing an awful lot of that with generations, young ones, old ones, whatever. But I think a lot of us are not taking responsibility for ourselves. And it's always blaming somebody else or something else. But this is all we have. This is just the body we have. We have nothing else. Everything else around us is just stuff we collect. But we must be responsible for ourselves. And I think it's a good message for people out there to have a look at themselves and be responsible for what they do and say.
And I don't think that if we choose to not address conflict, that we are missing an opportunity for growth. And I think that's where you and I disagree, Steve, because I sense that you feel every opportunity that is not dealt with is a missed opportunity for growth. And I do not believe that.
Well, I believe that because, and we can disagree respectfully.
Yes, I know.
Because what's going to happen is,
So does that mean you won't be on the next show?
The people like Sensei Grant, it isn't going to go away in your life. It's gonna come back. It's just have a different name, a different look. But you're gonna keep coming up with this in your life. I think, just my own personal experience, because the things that I don't handle and I don't manage, they handle me and they manage me.
But I would never have attracted Sensei Grant into my life if it weren't for the show. I don't have people like that in my life. I don't attract people like that into my life.
This isn't about Sensei Grant.
I know, but I'm just saying. So it's not like
this
I'm
is
going to
about
have
you.
to deal with, right. And I'm so fine not ever coming across people like that. I'm okay with that. And if that means that I'm really going to miss out on some wonderful opportunity, so be it. I'm okay too.
See, I'm a little bit the opposite, Jamie. I don't mind attacking something or whichever way I'm going to approach it, but I like to have that understanding. I don't like to have that not understanding with anybody. And as you said, Linda, whether you're friends or not friends or whatever you are, I love to have that understanding, and good, bad, right or wrong, they have their opinion, I have mine, but I love to have that understanding with not really breaking away or not sort of talking without having that sort of, okay, well, you do this and I do that and we're happy. That's me. I like positive.
For me, it's finding what is it.
That next week.
You will, and you probably will when you listen to the show, and you'll probably understand it, and then you'll be with him for a fourth time. But okay, Steve won't be there because Steve is having a conflict.
Oh, it doesn't matter what happens. I'm going to be here, and it doesn't matter who it is. I'm going to be here. Okay. So we can tell just from the energy, we can tell that the show is coming to an end because everybody is becoming very passionate and very connected, and sitting on the edge of their seat. So before we end the show, I would actually would like to hear from all of you in terms of our theme, Become Your Own Sage. Everybody could leave the viewers with a message in terms of, and you can have it any way you like, but my preference would be is maybe leave some tools and some modalities that people can use to help ourselves to really be the sage that our guest has created for this show as a title.
Well, I think the things I always say to people is you have to be awake, alert, and aware in your life, and then be conscious of the choices you make, and then be aware in those choices of the consequences or benefit to you. So, you are the driver of your life. You're the captain of your ship. So the more awake, aware, and alert you can be, the more you can see what's coming and how you can choose to respond around it. So being proactive.
I think mine
is
truth.
Follow up, Sorry.
Okay, mine is truth. I think truth will always set you free and will set your body free. You won't get as sick because it's all within you. That's
I was just
mine.
going to say, following on from Danielle, that in order to be aware and to do that, quite often people are walking around like this with blinkers on. And I think open up and see the big picture. Yeah. Have a look at the 180 degree or the 360 degree and calm. We don't have to slow down. We just need to calm down. And when we calm down, we'll ask better questions. We'll think of things as more interesting. And we'll just take a little bit more time.
Good. Awesome.
Okay, Jamie, really quick.
I would say trust yourself because no one knows better for you than you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very well said.
Okay, so for me, it's just pay attention to the coincidences. They are very powerful, and I think coincidences takes us out of this horizontal way of living our lives, and takes us into the vertical because there is a reason why whatever is happening is happening. All right, so that's it for me. So I really want to thank our guest, Danielle Galt, and everybody on the
Thank you,
cast.
Danielle. This
has been awesome. It felt like 1 minute for me. I don't know about you. And I want to thank all of our viewers and, of course, everybody behind the glass that are people that are helping us to make this show a success. And if there's anything that you heard here today that moved, touched, and inspired you, please go to livingconsciously.co and have one of us on the cast assist you. Other than that, don't forget to keep going to livingconsciously.tv. That's our website, and see what's happening, what's new. And, of course, we'll be here every Saturday at 3 o'clock Mountain Standard Time on Channel 56 on Comcast. And then after the show, after the live show, we will be archiving these shows, and you can have access to them on our website. Thank you all, and I love you all.
Thank you.
Love you.
This has been a fantastic show. Thank you.
Have a great week.